последняя попытка нормально постримить сегодня. Погнали.
Feel like a kid again, almost. But it's all back to serious work now, isn't it? All back to boring, serious work.
Does the relationship between you guys, who are all genuine friends, you've been karting for years, has that changed again now that you're back competing in F1, or is always the foundation is always going to be there?
I mean, the foundation's always going to be there. But
because you've been quite vocal in your support of Alexander Albon, and the fact that there have been times this season where he's been a bit, some could say, picked upon. He's been left out to dry a bit, and you stepped up.
Yeah, I mean, me and Alex have got a really good relationship, and that definitely hasn't changed at all. I think during the lockdown, we all came closer with Charles, Lando, even Nicholas, to be honest, came in as well, and all this time we were chatting every single day because we was always thinking of what the next thing is to do to try and entertain the fans. Obviously now we're back to reality. It has sort of disconnected slightly, but like I said, my relationship with Alex has maintained, and we've been really good mates for 4, 5, 6 years now.
What about yourself in the future? What's the aim? You're at Williams for next year, but still got one eye or both eyes on that Mercedes drive?
It's I'm obviously a Mercedes driver. I've never liked to look too far ahead because I think you can get carried away with yourself, and there is an end dream or goal you want to achieve, and sometimes if you're too fixated on that and forgetting to focus on your job at hand, you can start making mistakes and not doing the best job possible, which ultimately will get you that job or that dream at the end. So for me, my sole goal is to be an F1 race winner and F1 world champion, and I'm doing everything I can to do that. Obviously, as we know, the cars are so dominant in how your performance is. It makes it very tricky for a driver. But like I say, I'm just doing my job to the best of my ability at the moment. I've still got the full support of Mercedes. That hasn't changed at all since I signed with them back in 2017. That was always the case that I'd spent 3 years at Williams when we signed the deal back in 2018. So, we're still on plan. We're still on the right path. So who knows what's going to happen at the end of 2021. All I can do is go out there and drive as fast as I can.
When it comes to being in that Mercedes car, this is a slightly unfair question, I know, but would you rather be competing against Lewis, or would you have liked Lewis to left by the time you get there?
I think, no, definitely I would love to compete directly against Lewis. I think, every driver on this grid believes in themselves and believe what they can do. Lewis is obviously absolutely the benchmark, no doubt, probably is the best of all time. And to get the opportunity to go against him, learn from him, would be massive. So, I'm praying that he stays in for as long as possible. Maybe after a few races, I wish he would have left. But who knows? Like I say, I know that if I was to get an opportunity to drive alongside him, I don't expect to be directly on his pace, beating him from race one, because, like I say, he's the absolute champ of all time. But to have that chance to go again, to learn from him and see where that takes me, be a massive opportunity.
In some ways, you're obviously in a good position, being Mercedes, young driver, being on the grid with Williams, but your next teammate could feasibly be Lewis Hamilton. I mean, Valtteri Bottas is doing a good job there at Mercedes as well, but he's not got a lot of job security, and many people would say you're the next in line to take the job. But is there a concern that when you've had teammates of Kubica, Latifi, you've never been out-qualified in Formula One, and your next teammate could be the greatest driver of all time? That's going to be into the lion's den, isn't it? That's going to be a bit of a shock.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Like I said, I don't like to get carried away with myself. That is, at best, a year and a half away from even potentially happening. So, you know, Robert had a tough year last year for whatever reasons. Nicholas is only in his 4th ever Grand Prix. Who knows how this season's going to go? Obviously, I want to be pushed as much as I can to take me to my limits, but I feel like, you know, I'm not just relaxing because I've got a small pace advantage over a teammate at the moment or whatever. You know, every single time I jump in that car, I'm planning or wanting to drive to my absolute limits, and I know that one day if I were to be alongside you know, a multiple F1 champion, you need to be on it.
I always love listening to George Russell talk. So eloquent, so passionate. He's just brilliant, isn't he? We'll have a few chit-chats about George in just a moment, but it's half-time in the football. Let's go back to Old Trafford. What's happening, Juliet Farrington?
A goalless first half, that's what's happening. The Austrian side last with the best chance. A header coming off the crossbar inside 10 minutes of this Europa League last 16 second leg tie. United, of course, leading 5-0 from the first leg. Romero called into action, though, again at full stretch on the half hour, but they're really yet to get going, Manchester United. The Austrians showing the greatest threat so far. 9 changes, Manchester United, from their game against Leicester on the final day of the Premier League season. It's just that final ball that seems to be letting themselves down. It's 0-0 on the night, though. Copenhagen await the winners. Manchester United lead this Europa League round of 16 tie 5-0.
Thanks very much, Juliet. Maybe it'll be like the Formula One at the weekend and really get going right at the end. Who knows? Right, so George Russell. Jolien, I really enjoyed speaking to him. He's a good guy. That's what comes across whenever I talk to him.
I thought he was on great form earlier. He was chipper. He's usually quite in reasonable spirits, I think. And you sort of got the impression that he's really enjoying this year, what he's doing. Obviously, kind of actually racing this year. He's got a lot of confidence, turning up for a second year as well. You know how things work in Formula One. So he's doing a great job. Still yet to be out-qualified ever in his career, which is a nice stat. And you just really kind of want him to get a little bit a better car, a bit more performance to be fighting for points. That's the only thing missing right now.
I think what every British fan would love to see was a real good tussle between the likes of Hamilton, Norris, the other Brit at McLaren, and George Russell. If you were going to say which one of them would win in equal cars, Mark, who would you choose?
Don't ask me that question. Come on. That's the impossible question, isn't it? To compare racing drivers across cars, because, I mean, literally the only way you can compare a racing driver, in all honesty, is with his teammate, and even then, it's not a straight, direct comparison. So the answer is I don't know. I mean, it depends on the car, it depends on the day. Lewis Hamilton has the benefit of a wealth of experience that the other two youngsters don't yet have. But the other two are at the beginning of their career, and you would say if they have the longevity of career that Lewis had, there's nothing stopping them going on to achieve great things.
Well, Russell, Albon and Norris have all raced each other in the same car, haven't they? They came through Formula 2 together, and actually Russell was the champion, and he ended up getting the least competitive Formula 1 driver of the three.
That's true.
Right, we're really lucky at the moment as British Formula 1 enthusiasts to have such a great amount of talent coming through, because feasibly they could all be fighting for titles at some point. To choose who's the best between the three is just picking from mid-air really right now. They're in different parts of the grid. You've got Albon in a Red Bull. To be honest, looks like he's struggling more, but he's also got the toughest teammate to compare against, and that's always the comparison in Formula 1. But hopefully in the next few years they'll all be fighting at the sharp end.
I think the nice thing is we've also got some great characters coming through, haven't we? You touched on George Russell there, Lando Norris as well. They're a new breed of Formula 1 driver that are not only great inside the car, but they're also brilliant out of it. And I think Formula 1 can really benefit from that as time goes on, seeing a little bit more personality from a driver that perhaps we've lost along the way somewhere.
Yeah, it would be good. Right, let's move on because we are running out of time. We need to talk Racing Point. Andrew Benson is the BBC's chief F1 writer. And when it comes to them, we've got two things going on. We've got a protest. Renault brought that against them. And we've also got the fact that we don't know which driver is going to be in the car. Will it be Sergio Perez or will it be their replacement, Nico Hülkenberg?
Well, on the protest, first of all, Jenny, that was heard by the stewards today. But we're not expecting any result on that until Thursday or possibly even Friday morning before first practice. Basically, Renault have accused Racing Point of copying last year's Mercedes and breaking the rules whereby specific parts of the car have to be designed by the team themselves. So I have to wait. There's a big philosophical question on that. So it's going to be interesting to see what the verdict of that is. And then on Perez and Hülkenberg, well, there's a few people in Formula One, senior people in influential positions, who are really not very happy with the way Racing Point are conducting themselves over this scenario. Sergio Perez had a coronavirus test last Wednesday before the British Grand Prix, which they said was inconclusive, which basically meant it felt like he was positive. He had to have a second test on the Thursday. That was positive. The problem is that on Wednesday, the British advice on isolation was 7 days if you test positive for coronavirus. On Thursday, it went out to 10 days. Now, Racing Point are trying to argue that the first test was positive and therefore it's only 7 days. Therefore, as long as he can have a negative test before this weekend's race, he should be able to drive. Lots of people in authority in Formula One think that's a really bad way of looking at things. When the sport's done so much, jumped through so many hoops, put in so many hurdles in terms of protocols and so on to ensure that a championship can happen this weekend. So I think I don't know how that's going to pan out, and I think people are just wondering why they didn't just say, right, it's Hülkenberg for these two races and just get on with it. Why overcomplicate it? It's not like Hülkenberg's a bad driver, you know.
And also, it's the same track that Hülkenberg's already driven now, and Perez is the only man that wouldn't have driven it. It just seems a crazy situation where, I mean, it is kind of socially irresponsible. Formula One do so much to get this thing moving, but also to show that everyone's wearing masks in the paddock. Even if you are 2 meters from everyone, they do so much to show that they are caring and are really adhering to all regulations around the world. To have a driver test positive and then 8 days later turn up in the paddock just seems like madness.
It's a very strange place to be in, certainly, and for us not to know the driver lineup intentionally, kind of the day before we go into press briefings and the like, is a very strange situation to be in. But I suppose that is the place we find ourselves at the moment. We're expecting some sort of announcement tomorrow from the team about who will be in their press conference and who will be in their car for the weekend. Of course, Nico Hülkenberg didn't actually get to compete. His car broke down and didn't get to compete in the race. Very, very quickly, Paul di Resta has found himself with a temporary race seat. McLaren have asked him to be their reserve driver, Mark.
Yeah, so he was in at the MTC, McLaren's factory, this morning having a seat fitting, and the reason for that is that McLaren don't have a dedicated reserve driver, but pre-season they did a deal with Mercedes to have access to their reserve drivers. One of those is Stoffel Vandoorne, who, as you touched on at the start of the show, is off in Berlin racing Formula E, so he's out of action. Their other driver is Gutierrez, who raced, of course, many will remember a few years ago in Formula One. Mercedes bizarrely realised before the last weekend's British Grand Prix that Gutierrez actually doesn't qualify for a super licence because he's been out of Formula One for, I think it's for longer than 3 seasons. Now that seems a bizarre situation for a top Formula One team to find out by accident, which is the way it seems, but because of all of that, they have taken matters into their own hands and called on Paul di Resta, who of course we know last stepped into a Formula One car as a reserve driver for Williams a few years ago.
So it's only a matter of days before Jolyon Palmer gets the call up, surely. What are those teams, Jolyon?
I was just doing the quick math there, and I think I need a call up this year, otherwise I'm going to be out of super licence as well, am I? So I'm guessing di Resta, whilst he was a good driver, he's not driven a lot recently. I'm guessing he's kind of selected because he's at the track and it's convenient as much as the fact that he was solid.
Let's hope he's not listening to this so he doesn't feel hugely offended to that. You can get in touch with us
He was a
if
good
you'd
driver.
like to. f1@bbc.co.uk. Paul, please don't send an email. My thanks go to Mark, to Andrew, to Jolyon, and hope you've enjoyed the last hour of motorsport chat. That's all from us. The race goes off at 2:10 on Sunday. Commentary here on 5 Live. We'll also have an exclusive interview with Lewis Hamilton, which will play in the build-up and will also be available on podcast. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Up next, it's Sarah Mulkellins as we get ready for the PGA Championship.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 9 o'clock. This is Nikki Cardwell. Plane loads of relief supplies are being sent to Lebanon from countries around the world as rescuers continue to search for survivors of yesterday's devastating explosion at the main port in Beirut. The number of people killed in the blast has risen to 135. More than 5,000 have been injured. 300,000 have been made homeless. The Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab says Britain will support the Lebanese people in their hour of need.
We're going to provide immediate response and aid package and assistance package, search and rescue, humanitarian assistance up to £5 million, as well as expert medical support. And what's crucial at this time is that our support is tailored to the very specific needs that I've just talked through with the Lebanese Prime Minister.
Lockdown restrictions have been reimposed in Aberdeen because of a cluster of coronavirus cases. The changes include people not being allowed to visit each other's homes, and pubs and restaurants have been closed. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said the measures would be reviewed next week. The Deputy Chief Constable of Police Scotland, Will Kerr, has warned that for the time being there'll be more officers carrying out patrols in the city.
To deal with a small minority who decide that they don't want to do so and put others' health at risk, we will clearly and undeniably enforce the law when it comes to that very small minority of people.
The Mayor of Luton, who was caught flouting COVID-19 rules by attending a large party, has resigned. Tahir Malik, who's a Labour councillor, said there was no excuse for what he'd done. The BBC's Sam Reid says there's been a mixed response to the news in Luton.
Some people have said that, it is a mistake, but you've got to move on. Others have said what we've heard in a very different scale on the national level about one rule for one and one rule for another. It is worth saying that Luton's mayor is mainly a ceremonial role about opening buildings, raising money for charity. It's not like Greater Manchester or Bristol where there's real political power with the role. So this was always more about symbolism.
A teenage boy has been seriously injured after being hit by multiple cars on a stretch of the this morning. He was taken to Birmingham Children's Hospital for treatment. WH Smith is planning to cut up to 1,500 jobs. The retailer says its recovery from lockdown has been slow, and its stores at airports and railway stations have been particularly affected. Joe Biden will not be attending the US Democratic National Convention in person due to the coronavirus pandemic. Instead, he will accept the party's nomination as its presidential election candidate from his home. The party said to avoid risking the health of all those involved in the event, which is due to place in Milwaukee later this month, none of the speakers would be present either. BBC News, it's 3 minutes past 9.
5 Live Sports Extra.
International Test cricket continues. Bulls
off edge, caught behind.
After tests against West Indies and one-days against Ireland, England are ready to take on Pakistan in 3 test matches.
Brathwaite is stuck on the pad, bigger field up and it's given him. That is Broad's 500th wicket in Test cricket.
And you can hear every ball, every wicket and every boundary with the Test match specialty. England versus Pakistan. The first test live from Old Trafford continues tomorrow at 10:15 on 5 Live Sports Extra.
You're listening to the PGA Championship from TPC Harding Park, San Francisco on 5 Live and BBC Sounds.
Golf finally returns to the biggest stage, its first major in over a year since this.
Shane Lowry saunters up to this ball and he will complete it now by tapping it in. And have you ever heard a roar like that on a golf course ever before?
Rory McIlroy tells us how even autograph signings have changed post-COVID.
couple of kids came to the door, and I said, let me just go get a Sharpie out of my own bag. But yeah, I've signed a lot less autographs the last few months.
And we will find out how golf's newest bodybuilder wants to play the game in the future.
There are no limitations in his head to where he needs to stop. He's thrown out the weight of 270 pounds, and I think he wants to be like a Happy Gilmore.
Yes, the PGA Championship starts tomorrow at Harding Park in San Francisco, and we will have all the big talking points over the next hour for you here on 5 Live Sport with me, Sarah Mulcairns. We have waited a while for this first major, 13 months, in fact, since that open at Portrush, but I'm delighted to say that we are set up, not quite in San Francisco at Harding Park. We're in Salford in our socially distanced studios, but it is quite a nice, luxurious setup to the ones that we've been used to in the past. Ian Carter, our golf correspondent.
Luxurious might be pushing it a fraction, but it's very spacious, as it has to be. We're actually in, and people who watch W1A will know that BBC rooms, meeting rooms and so forth, are all named after various TV programmes, absolutely fabulous, whatever it might be. We're in the Strictly Come Dancing room. And to my right, we've got Tess Daly and Claudia looking down on us, massive life-size post. And to our left, there's Tess Daly again, but with dear old Bruce Forsyth. And the thought just crossed my mind that Bruce Forsyth would love the thought that golf coverage, his favourite sport, is coming from a room named after the programme that he made.
Oh, that is quite nice. I did wonder what the tag was going to be. So that's done quite nicely, Ian. Well done. Well done. And we also have, just grinning away beside us in the middle, Anthony Wall.
Wondering what on earth he's got himself into.
It's like, I'm here to talk golf, guys.
I was very impressed with that. I thought that was a great recovery.
I fear there may well be plenty more of those over the next 4 days because there is obviously a significant time difference. We're going to have to get used to that. We're going to have full coverage though for you right over the next 4 days. Thursday and Friday we're going to start at 8 o'clock live on the BBC Sports app and on 5 Live Sports Extra. Saturday we're going to be here from midnight through to 3 a.m. on 5 Live Sports Extra, and then on Sunday just join us for all of the final round. We're going to be on 5 Live. We're going to start at 10 p.m. We're going to see the winner all the way through to what we expect might be around 2 a.m. So let's all just get on the night shifts together because we've waited a while for golf to return in its major form, because we know that golf has returned on the various tours, but this does feel different, having a major back in 13 months.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's the first one, as you say, for 13 months. It's the first one of 7 in the next 11 months, if you think of it in those terms. How exciting that is for the sport in general. I think it's well worth making the point that golf has led the return to sport. We're all used to it being played in the absence of spectators now. It did come home to me just when we heard the very start of the programme and that roar that greeted Shane Lowry's victory the last time a men's major was won, just how evocative it was. And we won't have that, obviously, over the next 4 days. But listening to the players in the news conferences, we've had access to them. You can sense from them, I think, Anthony, that there is a real sense of anticipation, a real sense that, okay, there aren't any fans here, but we're ready to really grind away here, and come Sunday, someone is going to walk away with something that will mean an awful, awful lot to them.
Absolutely. I mean, this is massive. It's a major. You have personal goals. There'll be weekly, monthly, yearly, whatever it may be. And this is a major, and this is why you spend your childhood, your teens practicing like mad for these moments. And it is a great opportunity, as you say, because you've got all those majors in the next 11 months. It's incredible to have that much quality golf.
It's actually brilliant for the PGA Championship because it's always been the fourth of the 4 majors. For people who aren't familiar with what really counts on the golfing calendar, the Masters in April, the final major in July is the Open Championship over here in the United Kingdom. But the PGA until last year was always in August, and it was kind of after the Lord Mayor's show because the Open had gone before. And then it moved to May, and it still felt a little that way because the Masters had been the month before. But because there is this massive sense of anticipation for a major championship, I think that this is the highest profile PGA championship that I can remember, certainly. I really do get that sense that the players are up for it, golf fans everywhere are up for it, and for once, the fourth of the majors feels a little more significant.
Yeah. Anthony, I know you've been covering a lot of the golf that has been in the UK swing here, including the British Masters. So how have you found it out at those events?
It's been great. I mean, everyone has, they've behaved properly, they've done the right thing. We've all been tested. You couldn't get on site unless you'd been tested. They all came through negatively, and we're in bubbles. It was 2 or 3 hotels, and you couldn't go out. You couldn't just wander off to the pub. You couldn't do whatever you wanted. You had to stick to it because you were 500 people's livelihoods on offer here. You couldn't take,
Yeah,
it's incredible.
I think I was up there at Close House. I mean, we all stayed in the airport hotel. We were not allowed to go anywhere other than the golf course or the hotel. Interesting today, John Catlin, the American player on the European Tour, it transpired that he'd gone to the pub with his caddy and he's been kicked out of the tournament. Zero tolerance. And that was the thing that really came down to me, how seriously they're taking it. All the protocols had to be followed. We had to have the samples, the testing, the temperature checks. All of that had to be in place, as it will be at the PGA Championship this week, because it's vital for the sport. The sport will collapse without these tournaments. They have to be played.
Make no bones about it, it will do. We all love live sport and we all want it to continue, but unless the right people do the right things, you can't move forward.
Because Ian, we did have at the start of when the PGA Tour returned, there were instances of a lot of testing and perhaps people not properly following the guidelines. Do you think that has changed?
Yes, most noticeably, it was the second event at Hilton Head. The first event, we did commentary on it on 5 Live Sports Extra, and you were watching and you felt, because we're so used to the and you could see caddies being a bit close to the players bumping fists, players spitting, just various bits and bobs that went on there. You thought, you're not taking this as seriously. And I think that it dipped even further when they got to Hilton Head, where by all accounts there was a carnival atmosphere in that resort already, despite rising instances of COVID-19. And then Nick Watney tested positive. And to me, and the way that the players reacted thereafter, and I think they got a rocket from Jay Monahan, the commissioner of the PGA Tour, and they were told, you have to observe these rules or else we're finished. I think it was that serious, and there was a marked change there. And from that point, I think those players who, to me, were behaving as if they were above it all, suddenly realised that they were as vulnerable as anybody else. And when you look at it, they've been playing for, 7 or 8 weeks now. There's only been 7 or 8. Brandon Grace tested positive last week, but there have been very few, considering the number of tests that have taken place, that have actually tested positive. So it looks like the bubble system is actually working now.
Yeah, and we know that Rory McIlroy has been talking about that, hasn't he? Because he's been over there since the PGA Tour has restarted. Let's hear from him now, because he is the first to admit that he has struggled since returning to the course after lockdown.
Coming back from post-COVID, there's been good scores in there. There's been, I shot a 63 at Colonial. I shot a 65 to make the cut at Hilton Head, a 63 at Travelers, a couple of good scores last week in Memphis. So there's the good stuff's in there, and I was saying just earlier, it's just the sharpness and being efficient with my scoring, turning the 73s that I've shot into 70s. That's the sort of stuff, and I think when you're sharp and you're playing a bit, you're sort of in your groove, you're able to do that a little better. That's the stuff that I haven't been able to do since coming back out here. It's the scoring aspect of the game. I feel like everything else is pretty good. I'm driving it well. My iron play is good for the most part. It's just getting that key up and down to keep momentum going. You're pulling a putt here or there to keep the round going for the day. Just all that stuff that, when you're feeling it and when you're, in a good spot, that's when you start to do those things, and, momentum comes from there. I feel like the game's really close. Even the mediocre scores that I've shot, I've come off the golf course thinking, well, I actually didn't play too badly. I just didn't get a lot out of the round. So, if I can just keep playing like that and just be a little more efficient with my scoring, I'll be right where I need to be.
From a perspective of playing a major championship without fans, what's going to be the biggest change for you?
Honestly, for me, if anything, I've found myself looking at leaderboards a little more just to, see where I am on there and see where other people are. There's no feedback from anywhere else, so the leaderboards are the only thing you have to see how you're doing in the tournament. There's even no scoreboard holders, so you don't even know how the guys in your group are doing. You sort of feel like you're looking at the leaderboard a little more, but at this point we should all be used to it. It is what it is. It's going to be like this for the foreseeable future, and I've said in the last few weeks that I've struggled to adapt to it, but as I said, it is what it is, and you need to go out there and do the best that you can.
Roy, when was the last time you signed an autograph?
Last week, but not. I guess I stayed in the Southwind community there in Memphis, and a couple of kids came to the door, and I said, let me just go get a Sharpie out of my own bag, because they came with a Sharpie. So I guess last week, but even that, you go and you take your own Sharpie and make sure that it's sanitized and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I've signed a lot less autographs the last few months.
Great kids knowing who's in the neighbourhood and taking the opportunity to do that. Love them. Anthony, it has been interesting, hasn't it, with Rory McIlroy since the lockdown, because we know he was in such a rich vein of form pre-lockdown, and it just hasn't fired for him.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's talking about scoring, because that's what everyone's defined by. But the one point I want to make about the change of when we're playing these majors, everyone peaks at different times. So you could throw up a completely different set of winners in the next couple of months, and Rory will be conscious of that, because a lot of guys aren't playing at this time of year often, or they're finishing off, they're tailing off. So who knows where we are with form, really?
So by that, do you think there might be a nagging doubt in his mind that he's had his purple patch?
Possibly.
And do players worry about whether they can reharness it?
Well, absolutely. I think you often you make talk about money, but you often talk about how much performances, 3-week periods when people make their most money or they have their most purple patch. He might have had his early in the
with him, when you hear about it and when you look at Rory McIlroy and his demeanour on the course, so if you move away from, I suppose the technicals of it, he has spoken about how he's dealt with crowds, and you always notice his bounce, don't you? And when it's good, he's real bouncy character when he's walking around, and when it's not going his way, he just doesn't bounce as much in his stride.
Absolutely. I mean, but this week is a completely different animal to the last 6 that he's played, or the last 5 he's played. I mean, you're defined by major wins, and that's why Koepka constantly shows up, because they're ready.
Do you think this is what he needs, the fact that it is a major and that he can flip the switch? Because if you look at it, in the 5 tournaments he's played since lockdown, he's not had a single top 10 finish. I mean, he's been like my beloved Leicester City post-lockdown rather than Manchester United, his beloved Manchester United, who surged into the Champions League places. Do you think with a Wanamaker trophy, that the big prize there, that can flick a switch for him?
Well, I think so, and I think he's due to play well in one. There's no question about it. But also he knows there's probably 100 guys that might not perform under pressure when it matters. Where in a regular event they're going to hang around and they might get lucky. You don't get lucky in majors.
Okay, well, speaking of Manchester United, they are playing Glasgow in the Europa League last 16-second leg, and they're having a couple of goals since we last heard from Juliet Farrington.
Yeah, there have been a goal for each team. 2 goals while you were hearing from Rory McIlroy and having that chat as well. Last took the lead, the shot from Philip Wiesinger that literally flew into the top corner. It was one hell of a strike. Only equalised, though, a few minutes later by Manchester United through Jesse Lingard. But LASK, they deserve their lead. They've been good in this second leg throughout the evening. But as I say, that lead didn't last very long. So right now, 1-1 on the night between these two. Manchester United lead the tie 6-1 on aggregate, and they are right now heading through to the quarterfinals of the Europa League.
Thank you very much, Juliet. Juliet will keep us updated on anything else there. Okay, we have spoken a lot about the British contenders, a little bit with Rory McIlroy. I know we're going to get a little bit more from you, Ian, later on your article on the website, but I want to head to the USA and get the view from the American journalist Alex Maselli, who is with us now. Hello, Alex.
Hello, Sarah.
It's lovely to have you with us. Usually we'd be bumping into each other in a press room at the PGA Championship.
Yeah, no bumping anymore.
No, indeed, breaking all sorts of rules. So you at home? Are you going to view this all from home for the next 4 days?
I am. I was a chicken and didn't want to get on an airplane.
Alex, are you abiding by the rules? Because everything we see of the United States, it's a worthwhile question to ask.
Well, I mean, obviously, when our president doesn't abide by the rules, it's pretty simple to think that everybody else isn't either. But yes, I actually am.
Good.
Let's see. About 2 months ago, I drove up to Massachusetts to our house up there, and I quarantined for 14 days before I went out to the public. We wear masks all the time outside. And anytime I go into any store or anything like that, I wear a mask. But there are many people that don't abide by that. I mean, these are such simple things. Wash your hands, stay 6 feet away from people, put a mask on. Unfortunately, our country seems to think that this is just a joke, and there are large groups of people that will not abide.
And a serious point, just the environment in the United States, because we see the figures, they look horrendous. Is there a big sense of fear there, and would that be something that would percolate into the sort of very gilded community of professional golf?
Well, I think there's fear if you're a Democrat, and there's loathing that we're dealing with this thing as a Republican. Unfortunately, it seems to come down party lines. I think the players at first were not as focused on the issues at hand until they started seeing some positive COVID numbers. And I think Jay Monahan, the commissioner of the PGA Tour, even though he wouldn't say it publicly, privately explained to these guys that if you don't get your act together, we're not going to have a tour this year, and you're not going to be playing for the millions of dollars you're playing for. So get it figured out. And I think if you've seen over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've had nothing. And or maybe one, but I mean that you're going to get the odd one. But the players are more focused on this now, I believe, than they were before. I mean, I'm not saying that there were groups of them that saying we're not going to before, and because of that, I think you're seeing less positive cases on the PGA Tour.
And Alex, then when we look at the golf and the contenders, the PGA Championship always traditionally does bring a very strong American contingent, and a lot of the players are looking in quite good form. You look at Brooks Koepka coming into good form last week, Justin Thomas as well with that win, Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau. I mean, this is a pretty nice time to be covering it as an American journalist.
Well, Sarah, I think it's a conspiracy that we're not having a Ryder Cup because clearly the Americans are playing very well right now.
I don't think we need to be raising conspiracy theories now, do we?
But you're right. We have a lot of really solid, obviously almost everybody you've talked about, with the exception of Bryson, has won a major championship. So you get Justin Thomas, won one major championship, but looked so good last week and looked so good over the year. Has Bones or Jim Mackay, who was Phil Mickelson's caddy in the past, has him on the bag for 2 weeks. Now, that's just a huge positive because you have somebody that really understands what it's like to be in the hunt, even though his caddy previous to that, Jimmy Johnson, had been there as well. So Justin Thomas looks really, really well in the situation. Brooks Koepka looks much healthier than he did before. Clearly what he's done, I don't know, but his knee doesn't seem to have bothered him as much. He seems to revel in these type of situations. He kind of broke down yesterday how basically you take a field of 156 guys and it comes down to about 10 or 15 guys. So that's all he's focused on. And then you mentioned Bryson DeChambeau, who is turning the golf world on its ear in regards to how far he's hitting the golf ball and what success he's getting from hitting the golf ball so far. I think that's sometimes people miss that. The fact that you can hit the golf ball far is one thing, but you have to somehow find a way to be successful as well with it, and he seems to be finding that.
Yeah, let's focus then on DeChambeau. I know we're going to talk through more of the runners and riders later, but there is no doubt that for any sports fan who has been looking at the return of any sport along the way in the last few months, Bryson DeChambeau has been up there as one of the most talked about individuals, Ian.
Yeah, he's been the talk of golf since the return from lockdown, and one of the key reasons for that is that he completely changed shape. Yes, he'd put a bit of muscle on before at the start of this year, but he really accelerated that process. He eats a bewildering amount of food and protein shakes, and has piled it on. He's aiming to get up to something like 19 stone. He's around 17 stone now, and he is turning that into raw power that is being exerted onto the golf ball, and he's now turned himself into the biggest hitter in the game. He's an extraordinary character. He has tried, and by the way, there is a brilliant piece on the BBC Sport website by Alex Bysouth detailing all of this, and it's well worth a read. But you know, this is someone who is a self-styled golf scientist who believes that you should have your clubs all the same length, so the only difference is the loft on them. He's experimented with thicker grips, he's experimented with different putting styles, and everything has been scientific. I had a chat with him last year on the phone, and his form had nosedived after he'd brilliantly won in Dubai, and I said, what's the problem? And he said, well, the problem is that there's too much moisture around. I said, what? And he said, I said, what, so you can't play in the rain? He said, I can't play when there's dew on the ground because it's factoring in on the golf ball, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just thinking this is absolute nonsense. But this is the level to which he analyses it all. And he's decided, he's looked at these long drive competition winners and their physique, and he's gone with it, and he's made himself ever more powerful, and now he's smashing it a country mile.
Is it paying off, Anthony?
Well, rightly or wrongly, he believes it, and that's all that matters. At the end of the day, he looks like he's paying off, but one little thing that I've noticed, having walked with him a few times early in the season, his stance is a lot wider. He looks more stable through the ball. His technique is all his own, we know that, but I felt he was a little bit sort of wayward in his structure of his body, where now he's definitely more solid, and that's down to two things, his weight and the width of stance.
But this is the test now, isn't it? Because he's been playing on PGA Tour setups in nice warm weather where the ball is flying miles, and he can bomb it and gouge it, not out of major championship rough. We've seen pictures from Harding Park. It's kind of like English autumnal weather, isn't it? It's chilly, the grass is thick and lush and juicy. It's a major setup, penal. Can you bomb and gouge it in the way that he has been?
Yeah, it's the pressure you put on yourself. You start missing fairways in thick rough. That's when it becomes difficult. You know, regular events, that they're great golf courses, but they are set up differently. You get the odd one, the odd exception, but most of all, you can get away with it. Major championships, certainly US Open, PGAs, you don't. So you have to hit the fairways, and it'll be interesting to see how much pressure he puts onto him if he misses a few fairways early on. It's a different kettle of fish.
Well, you say that because DeChambeau has been talking today, and he says he will not compromise his style of play on this challenging course.
As the rough stands right now, I think the risk is definitely worth the reward. If you do hit it into the rough, I still think you can get it to the front edge of the green, and from the front edge on these greens, you can kind of get it to any pin. Yeah, so for me, as of right now, I'm going to be hitting up there as far as I can and hopefully wedging it close and making some putts this week.
You are playing so well right now, especially since the return. Do you feel as if this may be your best chance, given how well you're playing, in winning a major?
As of right now, yeah. I don't feel like there's a better time. Again, I'm just going to do my absolute best out there. I'm not going to try and hype myself up at all. I'm going to treat this like just another tournament for me. Even though it is a major, it's a great event, great venue. For me, it's going to be about doing my work, hitting fairways, hitting greens, and adding the score up at the end of the week, and hopefully it's the lowest score.
Yeah, Bryson DeChambeau there. Alex Maselli is joining us from the United States. Alex, I imagine the talk has been, fierce and hot around Bryson DeChambeau post-lockdown, and, even his character about he just doesn't want to follow conventions or rules. He wants to kind of break things, doesn't he?
Well, I mean, even when he came out, Sarah, he was breaking the rules, as Ian had said, about the length, it's the same length of the iron shafts and things like that. So he's always been doing this for a while. But I think what people don't understand is, A, the commitment that Bryson had to have to do what he did. And then B, we were talking to Gary Woodland today, who had spent some time with Bryson, and said, people talk about his length, but they don't give him enough credit for his ability to putt. I mean, you have to have more than just that length. There's a lot of guys that were long over time, but they had to find a way to go ahead and convert that into scoring, and he's been able to do that as well. And I think at the end of the day, he's going to be a lightning rod on this tour for a long time. I don't think he's going to go away. The question is if his body can handle trying to hit the ball as hard as he does. I mean, we've even seen the great Tiger Woods have problems with trying to hit the ball as hard as he used to try to hit it. So there's going to be some interesting things that are going to happen to Bryson over time as he gets a little older. But I think right now he is the talk of the town, and I don't see that changing if he wins or he loses. I don't see that changing. And that's very hard to do. No matter what your success is, people are still interested in seeing what you're doing.
Question marks, though, Alex, about his temperament. You look at what he did at Memorial when he got into a spat with a rules official after his ball, and anyone who plays the golf to any kind of level knew that his ball was out of bounds. He had an argument to say that it could be in bounds, and felt that he was getting the wrong end of that ruling and was looking for second opinions, and ultimately ran up a 10 on that hole. Then last week we saw him trying to get a free drop because of ants, red ants on the ground. And again, from that moment on, and you know, there's one aspect to it, trying it on, but the second thing is that post those incidents he has faded from contention. So that to me suggests that there might be some mental frailty there.
I'm not going to disagree with you, Ian. I think that's true. I think that he, for as long as I've known him, and it's been a long time, I've known him for a long time, even in the amateur ranks, you know, he does have that, has that thought that he's not wrong, clearly. And he gets upset very easily. I mean, even with his caddy, Tim Tucker, there was a point where Tim, who was probably the best caddy for him over time, he ended up at one point realizing that he needed to fire Tim because he was being so difficult for Tim. Tim's life was becoming miserable because how Bryson treated him. And then in turn, when Bryson realized that he couldn't really play better with any other caddy, he needed Tim back. He called Tim up, and Tim was not as willing to go ahead and come back on Bryson's bag until they straightened out a couple things. So I think you're right. He's got these issues that he has to deal with. But I think, you know, he's still a really young guy, and he's going to have to slowly but surely figure that kind of stuff out. And I think over time he will. But in the meantime, if he's going well, it's pretty hard to stop the Bryson DeChambeau train.
And I suppose, Alex, when you look at Bryson as a character, and I suppose what makes him, you know, I'm trying to choose my words carefully, because he can be an easy target in some regards because he does think differently and because he backs himself, and, you know, he's unapologetic about it. But, you know, then he says, you know, that he aims to live to 140 years old, and he believes that it's possible with today's technology. And we know that that is part of him and, you know, his past and what he has studied and that. And I just wonder how much that feeds into conversations around Bryson DeChambeau, and whether that's a fair thing or not.
Well, I don't know if it's fair or not, Sarah. I'm not into the fair and unfair game, but what I will say is this. I think over time, when you keep saying the things he says, people will start to discount them and basically almost ignore them. And I learned that pretty easily from what we've had over 4 years in this country. Eventually, we decided to just continue to ignore Donald Trump versus listening to him and taking any credence in what he has to say. And I think it's the same thing with Bryson. I mean, at some point, the media, the players will just say, it's just Bryson, and just move on. And I think we're slowly moving in that direction.
Anthony, is he good for golf?
He's different, so he's great for golf. I think he brings a completely different sort of thought pattern to it, and how he completely thinks outside the box. And what's wrong with that? I think he's an individual. I think he's great.
It's challenging then, isn't it? You know, if golf has its set ways, that you have somebody that comes in and disrupts it.
Tiger Woods came in and completely disrupted it, and we love that. So, you know, this is just another aspect of how someone sees the game of golf.
And his impact will be significant, I think. We had Colin Montgomery on the guest list before football came back, and you know, you started pushing him on that because Bryson was belting the ball so far, and Colin made the point, and he's not alone in doing so. Many of the greatest names in the game, Jack Nicklaus among them, have said, look, you're going to have a tournament ball because they're hitting the ball too far for the size of golf courses, and otherwise you're going to have to extend those golf courses to be able to maintain a fair challenge. And if DeChambeau is getting success out of this, then you can bet your bottom dollar that other people will follow it. We were having a great conversation over dinner today about just how different the game is compared with when Anthony and I started playing. Obviously, Anthony to a fantastic level, but we both started hitting with wooden clubs, and it was a completely different game. And now people coming into the game will look at DeChambeau and say, right, I'm eating bacon endlessly, I'm drinking protein shakes, I'm going into the gym, I'm bulking up, and I'm going to swing it as fast as I possibly can. And that will have impact on the sport. And in athletics, the javelin had to be changed because it was being thrown onto the running track, and that is the problem that is being faced by golf already, and it's going to be accelerated if players follow the DeChambeau template and are all belting it the best part of 400 yards off the tee.
So in a way he could help in terms of forcing that conversation, Anthony.
Absolutely, but for me, I would make the putter the shortest club in your bag, be the first thing I would do. I would narrow fairways. I could go on and on and on before I would change the game of golf because of one man.
Okay.
Nick Faldo, get rid of tees.
Really?
Well, I thought it was a good thing.
I think it's a good idea.
I'd have 12 clubs as well,
yeah,
rather than 14.
Not for us amateurs, though, please. Well, if you, either of you, by any chance, want to maybe, model yourself on Bryson DeChambeau, maybe, have a look at what he's doing.
He's doing the opposite.
I had a good go for a while.
Well, you're going to be interested in this next man, because this is the guy who has helped DeChambeau gain all that muscle. According to the personal trainer Greg Roskop, his clients plan to push the boundaries even further from now on.
There are no limitations in his head to where he needs to stop. He's thrown out the weight of 270 pounds. I mean, he wants to keep gaining the mass, and that may not be for me or somebody else, but if that's what you want to do and you're performing at a high level, as long as he's maintaining and increasing his strength with that mass and maintaining his club head speed and the velocity, or even improving it, it's going to have positive changes in his distance. And I think he wants to be like a Happy Gilmore. He wants to be hitting those 400-yard greens in one. And so as long as we don't see a negative effect in his overall performance or any increase in potential for injury, then the sky's the limit.
Yeah, really interesting. And that was more from that article that you had mentioned, Ian, as well, on the BBC Sport website. So you wouldn't change golf for one man, Anthony?
Correct.
No?
Correct. Maybe if there's 20 or 30 of them, but I certainly would, I'd see how it plays for a while. I think we had long handles and square grooves for far too long. So for me, I would go down that route before I would change for just one man.
And I suppose what has been interesting, with Bryson DeChambeau is his relationship with other players. We mentioned media attention and all that, but actually it is interesting, particularly with Brooks Koepka.
Yeah, he's getting under the skin of Koepka, isn't he? And there's no love lost there. There's been a number of comments from Koepka. Koepka used to be the most boring interview. You'd say, well, Koepka's in, I'll go and have a cup of coffee. We'll take a little break there and get ourselves ready for McIlroy or something like that. But now they're must-watch press conferences because he says stuff, and it's very clear that he's not a fan of Bryson DeChambeau. And there was a brilliant piece of footage from last week when he was with his caddy and he looked down, and this refers to that, because there were some burrowing ants, and Koepka turned to his caddy Ricky Elliott and said, I think there's an ant down there. And he knew that the cameras were there, he knew that the microphones were there, and the two of them started giggling away. And he's making it very, very clear that he's not impressed. And I don't know what you think, Anthony, and Alex as well. Is DeChambeau getting under the skin of Koepka because his results haven't been that great, and DeChambeau's getting all the coverage and all the attention, and Koepka, he's the defending champion this week. He's won 4 majors in pretty short order. Is he getting irritated, Alex, do you think?
Well, he clearly has to be getting irritated because exactly not only these comments but other comments he's made as well over the last year or so, actually. So I don't know why he's getting irritated, because there's one guy that's got 0 majors and one guy that's got 4. But that being said, he is taking a lot of the limelight away from other players, and that may be, this is an individual sport, and so they all have egos. Except for Anthony, never had an ego that I know of.
Lovely.
but they all have egos, so that could happen. But I think at the end of the day, there are players that like Bryson, and there are players that clearly don't. And I think you parallel it against somebody like Bubba Watson, where you can see there are people that like Bubba Watson and there are people that didn't.
Tiger Woods was a big mates with DeChambeau, wasn't he? You know, around the time of the Ryder Cup, they were they partnered each other at one stage, didn't they? And or that was certainly the big speculation that they would play against each other, but or with each other. But that seems to have cooled a little, or am I wrong there, Alex?
No, I think that they have a good relationship, but I think Tiger's best relationship is with Justin Thomas, and you saw that at the President's Cup. If you watched any of that, Ian, I know you guys don't like the President's Cup, but it was clear the relationship between Justin and Tiger is pretty strong.
Are you an American accusing me of being parochial?
No, I'm just kind of pointing out, you know, that there was a big team event in Australia in December. That's all.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It was good. It was good. If you were there, it was terrific.
Wrong team won, mind you.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with that either, but that's neither here nor there.
Anthony, how often do frictions spill over like that in the behind the scenes in the locker room?
Often. I mean, there's always things going on. You've got 156 guys going head to head, and you know, at the end of the day, there's going to be things that happen. You know, high stakes, high pressure moments. People have disagreements. You do things spur of the moment. It happens a lot.
And particularly, I suppose, with Brooks Koepka, that it really was only last week that he came back into some sort of form. So I'm sure that was niggling.
It is peculiar. It's almost like his identical twin has appeared, because he was quite, dare I say, slightly boring in his press conferences, and he's come out completely different. And I think lockdown has changed him, maybe.
And I think what was interesting there is that he was defending champion last week. It was a World Golf Championship. Now, that's the strata of tournaments below the majors, but features all of the world's best players. And he does get his game up for the biggest events. We know that for a fact. But the other significant factor that was involved there was the fact that one of his coaches, Pete Cowan, who looks after his short game, English coach, had got out there and was able to see him. And I don't think it's a coincidence, or I think it's more than a coincidence, that Cowan's there and he gives him some straight talking, and it's not just technical advice that he gives. And all of a sudden, Koepka looked a different animal on the golf course.
And that's interesting you mentioned that, because some of the other players have been speaking about that in their press conferences. And Alex, maybe this is why some of the American players are perhaps performing better than some of the international players that are playing on the PGA Tour, because Shane Lowry said the exact same thing about he couldn't quite figure out why he wasn't putting well, and then he has Bo back on his bag last week, and he had his coach back, and he was able to spot a couple of things that he couldn't. And we've seen this from a lot of the international players. I know Fitzpatrick has been talking about it again, you know. So Alex, do you think that's one of the reasons that perhaps there's been more of a dominance from some of the American players?
Well, I think it's huge. Yeah, we're taking your coaches and bringing them over here and helping our players. And Pete Cowan is clearly the best of the lot. Gary Woodland today talked about the fact that he talked to Pete a lot on the phone and showed him videos, but he needed somebody in his ear, and Pete suggested this guy Justin Parsons. And again, it's all about these guys feeling comfortable that what they're doing is the right thing. They just want validation that what they're doing is the right thing. So if he couldn't get Pete, he got Justin Parsons. But he's talking to Pete all the time. He's talking to Kenyon. I mean, this is a constant thing with these guys. Now, they're so dependent on these coaches, where if you would have talked to Jack Nicklaus or Arnold Palmer, I mean, Jack wrote like one time a year for about 30 minutes, and that was it. And anything that had to happen on the golf course over the rest of the year, Jack figured out himself. There's very few of these players now that can figure things out themselves. They need to have that validation from these instructors, and they've gotten it over the last couple of weeks. So I think you're going to see a Gary Woodland, who won a U.S. Open last year, a Brooks Koepka, play well again. I mean, I think you're going to see a lot more of that.
And that was an interesting point you made about Phil Kenyon, the putting coach. He's the preeminent putting coach in the world, an Englishman from not far from us here in Salford, actually. And he got involved with Brooks Koepka and just made a couple of adjustments there. And Koepka's putting was way, way better for the most part. He did have one dreadful 3-putt from 3 feet in the second round, but apart from that, he looked much, much better on the greens. I think that's important. But also, Anthony, that point about players being in a sense not being as self-sufficient as they once were, because they all have these entourages, and they've of course been compromised by COVID.
Well, actually, it's a fascinating point, because certainly I've been away for the last 2 weeks on the European tour, and I watched players before I was on course commentating, and they looked lost. They really did look lost. They were practicing almost for the sake of it. They didn't have their coaches with them, and actually it completely slipped my mind until Alex had mentioned it. And it's so true, because Pete is a special man. He's a great coach. He relies on looking at the ball flight. He's got no interest in technology. He's all about his experience in ball flight, and so looking in screens and stuff means nothing to him, so being there is so important.
Yeah, and just that confidence, I suppose, that they get from it, that being settled. Let's hear from Brooks Koepka then, because he is the defending champion. He is going for 3 on the spin of PGA Championships. He would be the first person to do that in the stroke play era as well.
It's pretty obvious it's a major. When you pull in, I don't know how else to answer that. It's pretty obvious it's a major. It's a big boy golf course, tough place, tough setup. I mean, I know it, so that's all that matters.
Do you enjoy, with regard to the number 1 ranking, kind of bouncing around a little bit? You had it for a stretch, Rory, Rahm had it for a few minutes, now JT has it. Do you enjoy that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole goal. The whole goal is to be the best player. If you're not trying to do that, then I don't know what you're doing. I'm not out here to just try to compete and have a good time. I'm out here to win, so, winning means being the best and being number 1, so that's the goal, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the. Right now, you got JT, John, Justin, myself, DJ, all right there. So it makes it fun. It's exciting. As a fan, I'm sure it's exciting.
Bullish Brooks Koepka, the big boy course, Anthony. He just brings it, doesn't he, for bigger occasions?
He just seems edgy. He's a different character, and I like it. It's great because he's got the game. He's done it. He knows how to get it done. So bring it on. I think it's great.
It's amazing how quickly things change, though, isn't it? He spent more years, more weeks at world number 1 last year than any other player. He actually got a presentation for that this week, the Mark McCormack Award for that. And now, already, he's down to number 6 in the world. So that's going to hurt, isn't it? His results, he had the knee problem. He had an issue with his left knee. That left side is so important, especially for a modern golf swing. But he looked a lot fitter, I think, last week in Memphis. Big boys golf course, I love that. Just him saying that, and and I'm a tough guy, and I'm a big boy, and I'm ready. And he said it with just such a. Did you notice that, Alex? I'm sure you were on the Zoom call or whatever it is that we have to go on to do this press conference. There's a steeliness in that eye.
Well, yeah. I think what you're referring to is the fact that he looked like he was ready to draw a gun from either side.
Yeah.
Yeah. He the thing about Koepka is you take somebody that you really didn't know a lot about, and then all of a sudden he gets hot, and he doesn't let go. He's like a bulldog. He will not let go. And for the last basically 3 years, Brooks Koepka has been probably the best player in the world. But now, as you say, after an injury and everything else, he's kind of fallen back. But he doesn't want to forget that he is still, in his own mind, the best player in the world, and he doesn't want you to forget it either.
Okay, we have had a goal at Old Trafford, Juliette Parrington.
Yes, and it's gone to Manchester United. They're ahead for the first time in this second leg Europa League round of 16 tie against Lask. 2-1 they lead. In the closing stages, it was substitute Martial playing a lovely 1-2 with Juan Mata finishing off the night from close range. He replaced Daniel James even just a few moments earlier, so he's only on the pitch a matter of minutes, but the press box is starting to empty. It's been that kind of night. It's not been a thriller. Manchester United lead, and they have that aggregate scoreline as well at a 7-1 lead against Lask. So it's almost certain that they are going to go through to the quarter-final stages of the Europa League tie, as Martial has just taken another shot that has been blocked by the Austrian keeper. Manchester United lead 2-1, 3 minutes of added time remaining in this round of 16 tie. Manchester United looking like they are going to go through to Germany next week to finish off the Europa League tournament.
2020 would have got even stranger if it was David James still on the pitch. Jules, thank you very much. Juliet Farrington at Old Trafford. Alex Maselli, I do want you to stay with us. I know we have been in deep discussion about the American contenders, but I fear we are going to have to mention some others. And Ian, I know you've been writing on the website about some potential British hopefuls, some Europeans. You know, where is this challenge going to potentially come from?
Well, I don't think you can discount Jon Rahm, who was world number one until Justin Thomas won at the weekend. He's won since coming back from lockdown. The temperament in majors has let him down in the past, but he's a major winner in waiting, and I'd be amazed if we didn't come through this 11-month period ahead with all these majors in it without him being a winner of at least one of them, and it could well happen this week. But I do think that there are reasons to be optimistic from a British and a UK point of view. Otherwise, he's won in America this year. He's been second and fourth in a couple of other events this year. I just love his very uncomplicated game, which I think will suit Harding Park very well. Matthew Fitzpatrick had a strong showing last week, and I think has the sort of game for a tough but fair PGA setup. And you said at the start, Anthony, Tom Lewis finishing in a share of second place last week, and you know, this is someone who's risen from 400 in the world in the last 2 years. This is why I wrote my piece on the BBC Sport website, because I just think that there is some real strength there for the Brits.
Very much so. I'd love to see Tom Lewis compete. I mean, this is a different animal, but he proved it last week. Yes, it's the one step down from a major, but he's doing it. He's a great driver of the golf ball. You often play well for 2 or 3 weeks, and he showed how good he is. Can he step up to beat people like Koepka and Jon Rahm when it really matters? Who knows, but he's got the game to do so.
And you've got people like Tommy Fleetwood, Danny Willett, Justin Rose. I mean, Rose's form's been pretty wretched. Fleetwood doesn't seem to have settled into a rhythm as yet, but we know that, you know, he's got the capability to contend.
Yeah, they're all major champions waiting. It's just whether they can actually bring it on a particular week, and with the schedule, you know, completely changed around, who knows where we're going to be.
And Matt Wallace, that's the other one as well. I mean, he was third in the PGA last year, beaten only by Koepka and Dustin Johnson, and really revelled, didn't he? He didn't go away. Yeah. We watched it at Bethpage, and he's got a certain something about him. Whether he's got the technical game, he's got the Poulter type game.
I think he's got it.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think he's got it all. He's lost a bit of form. If he finds his form, then he won't back away. He'll hang around. He's got the game. He's got the mentality. He just looks a little bit. He's gone off the board a little bit.
And who knows which Rory McIlroy will turn up.
We will see. What about maybe somebody else like the last man to win a major, Shane Lowry, back in July 2019. The favourite for this week's title, we know, is Brooks Koepka, and he has said that he expects Lowry to be in contention.
I played a little bit with Brooks in lockdown, and we had a good time. And it's great. It's nice to be able to play with some of the best players in the world, and I was fortunate enough to be able to do that during lockdown. But do I expect myself to be there on Sunday? Look, if I bring my best golf, I can be there. But I try and lower expectations as much as I can on a week like this. I just try and, you know, go out tomorrow and worry about what I'm going to shoot tomorrow first, and, you know, keep going from there. And the golf course itself, look, it's just a difficult golf course. It's probably the guy who drives it in the fairway most will probably win, but you still need to hit it a decent distance. But I'm looking forward to it because I like weeks like this. I think it's you know, it's mentally challenging. So if I can get myself in a good frame of mind come tomorrow morning when I tee off, who knows what could happen.
Tell you what, Brooks Koepka does a really good Shane Lowry impression.
They've been playing together so much in lockdown that they kind of rubbed off on each other.
Interchangeable, really. Just to let you know, it has gone full time at Old Trafford. Manchester United winning 2-1 on the night against Lask. That's 7-1 on aggregate. So they progress to the quarterfinals of the Europa League. Alex Maselli, we haven't included you in a while as we were talking about hopes from around Europe. Do you see any of those contending? Any of those going to take on some of the Americans?
Well, I mean, obviously you think Rory is. I don't think there's any question. And I agree that Rahm is just a major winner in waiting. I don't know if it'll be this week or not. But, there's a couple guys you didn't mention, at least I hadn't been through the whole broadcast. One is Stenson. And the reason I kind of like him is because I think that 3-wood off the tee will serve him well at this golf course. And he's won a major. But I'm going to give you a sleeper outside of everybody you've talked about, which is Matthias Schwab. I think that he has a lot of game, and he's slowly coming into the form that he needs to. He played a lot in the United States when he went to Vanderbilt, obviously, and I just think that he's got the game that might be able to handle certain situations. I liked it every time I see him play. I think he's got a lot of game. So those are two guys that I like, and I do have to wonder what has happened to Justin Rose.
Yeah, it's been a curious one, hasn't it? He switched club manufacturers and it didn't really work out, although he did win initially with the Japanese clubs that he was working with. He ended that relationship. He's ended his relationship with Sean Foley, his longtime coach. He's doing it on his own, but he's missed his last 3 cuts, 5 of his last 7. So it's been his worst form for a decade, 18 months since a win. So I think anything that brings him into a top 15 or better finish will be an excellent week for Justin Rose, albeit that he is obviously the caliber of player who goes to majors with an expectation and a serious hope to win. I'm not sure that that'll be the case this time. I don't know what you think, Anthony.
Yeah, he's clearly got the game. He's got the class. Does he drive the ball straight enough and long enough? Not quite sure about that at times. He's certainly gone off the boil. I think it's a mistake. He's left his coach. I think they've been a great partnership for a long time, and he has made him a lot better player. So it's a strange one.
I don't know if you want me to stay just in Europe, or do you want another name?
I'm going to just pause you there for the moment, because we're going to get some tips to end the hour on at 200 to 1, by the way, from Matthias Schwab. So there's a very good outside tip there from Alex Maselli. So get your tips ready. But seeing as the room that we're going to be broadcasting from for the next 4 days is Strictly Come Dancing, it has Bruce there. We're going to play a game of higher or lower. Yeah, it's been sprung on you, Ian Carter. You know nothing about it. And this is about, we know that the person who has put on an awful lot of muscle, Bryson DeChambeau, 109 kilos. So we're going to do a little game of higher or lower for whether golfers are higher in weight or lower than weight to Bryson DeChambeau. So, Ian, Brooks Koepka, let's start with him. Higher or lower?
Lower.
Correct. 92 kilograms. Anthony, Patrick Reed, higher or lower?
I'm going to go lower.
You would be correct, 91 kilograms. Alex Maselli, are you going to join in the fun from America?
Absolutely.
Okay, Rory McIlroy, higher or lower?
Lower.
Yeah, 73 kilograms. Anthony Wall, Tony Finau.
Oh, that's a tight one, that is. I'm going to go higher.
Lower, 91 kilograms.
Well, nowhere near.
So these are all lower than DeChambeau or higher than DeChambeau?
Yeah. Finally you get it, is it? Only a few rounds later.
But I didn't know whether it was progressive, that was all.
Oh, yeah. Well, the last one for you, Coach Carter.
You're going to say John Daly, aren't you?
No.
No?
No. Aphibarnrat. Kiradech Aphibarnrat.
Oh, Kiradech Aphibarnrat. Ooh. Higher.
You would be wrong.
Oh.
104 kilograms. Bryson DeChambeau, 109.
He's a heavyweight contender, isn't he?
There we go. What a wonderful game.
What a belter that was.
Yeah, pregnant pause. You're like, please move on, Sarah. Right, a couple of minutes left.
Whose idea was that?
Yeah. Wasn't mine. I'm disowning it immediately. I've no crowd to react to. This is awful.
Well, you've got to have some that are higher and some that are lower. They were all lower.
Yeah. Well, Bryson is clearly the contender. He's the leader in that market. Right, give us your tips then. Couple of minutes left. Anthony?
Well, I'm going to be very boring and I'm going to say Brooks Koepka, but I'm going to throw Xander Schauffele in there as well.
So why Schauffele then?
I think he's a class horse. He will win a major soon, but like John Rahm, I think he certainly looks like he's got his A game, and he's a major player. I think he's not quite a Brooks Koepka, but he's not far behind.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Matt Fitzpatrick. I think he's set his stall out. He says he's concentrating on the majors. Billy Foster's with him. His coaching team's been out there. Things are falling into place with him. He didn't win last weekend, but he contended, looked very, very good. But I'm going to give you a couple of other names. Colin Morikawa.
Yes.
We
haven't even talked
iron
about the
play,
youngsters.
Yeah, his iron play and approach play, if his putter can respond to that, then he will definitely be a contender. And the other dark horse that no one ever mentions, and I'm going for the number 4 in the world, Webb Simpson.
Oh, of course.
Webb Simpson, who won his US Open at Olympic Club, which borders this golf course, Harding Park, the other side of Lake Merced.
Alex, quickly.
Gary Woodland.
Very quick, I like that. Very good shout. Alex Maselli, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we will get you to pop up with us over the next...
Hang on.
Oh, my tip?
Yeah.
I haven't even thought about this. No, I won't go Shane Lowry, even though he did have a decent week last week. I'll go Brooks Koepka. I know it's what it is, but you know what? Last week he was back on it, and it's a big course. He's a big game player. He brings the talk. He's got to bring the golf this weekend, and we are going to bring you the golf all weekend, right across 5 Live and Sports Extra and the BBC Sports website. You do not want to miss it. We will be here with you, so join us.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 10 o'clock. This is Nikki Cardwell. The Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab says the UK will send medical experts and humanitarian aid to Lebanon following the massive explosion in Beirut yesterday. The blast at a warehouse where ammonium nitrate was stored unsafely killed at least 135 people and injured 4,000 others. Search and rescue teams are looking for survivors under the debris of collapsed buildings. Our correspondent in Beirut, Karine Torbay, says thousands of properties are now uninhabitable.
There are tens of thousands of people who cannot return to their homes. We have seen a lot of community support. We have seen a lot of people opening their houses to strangers, to relatives, to friends. But this is not a sustainable solution. The government should really work to find shelters to those people.
Pubs, restaurants and cafes in Aberdeen have been ordered to close in an attempt to halt the spread of coronavirus after 54 cases were diagnosed in the city in recent days. Residents have been told not to enter each other's homes. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said the measures would be reviewed in a week's time. Colin Borland from the Federation of Small Businesses says the local lockdown is a hammer blow to Aberdeen's economy.
If the alternative is a return to a nationwide lockdown, then these local lockdowns are obviously the least worst option, but that is absolutely no comfort at all to those Aberdeen business owners, their staff and suppliers, because they thought they were just getting back on their feet. So I think this really underlines the need that we all need to stick to the rules.
The Mayor of Luton, Tahir Malik, has resigned after breaking coronavirus guidelines by attending a large gathering. Pictures on social media showed him chatting with other guests less than 2 metres apart and with a mask hanging below his face. He said he regretted his actions. The retailers WH Smith and M&Co have become the latest companies to announce job losses because their sales have been hit by the pandemic. WH Smith says it's looking to cut 1,500 jobs or 11% of its workforce. The fashion chain M&Co is making 380 people redundant. Sarah Arnold from the New Economics Foundation says 1 in 7 workers are likely to be out of a job when the coronavirus crisis reaches its height.
Even the more conservative estimates suggest unemployment is likely to reach 3.5 million people by next year, compared to a peak of 2 million during the financial crisis. The numbers are absolutely staggering. If you look at some of the sectors that are particularly at risk, like retail, hospitality and leisure, the workers most at risk are disproportionately those in lower income households.
And Manchester United are through to the last 16 of the Europa League after beating the Austrian side Lask 2-1 at Old Trafford. United had also won the first leg in Linz in March before the competition was suspended because of the pandemic. And the weather, much of the UK will remain dry and warm overnight. BBC News, it's 3 minutes past 10.
The British Grand Prix.
The front lefters blown and punctured. Max Verstappen could win the race, and we're going to have the slowest race to the
British Grand Prix with 5 Live's Checkered Flag podcast. Download and subscribe now.
F1 on 5 Live.
Welcome to Match of the Day, Top 10. Jermaine Genus is here with me, as usual, for this second series. And it was a good start, Jermaine. Cesc was great, wasn't he?
He was very good, very talkative, gave us some great stories. A few things that surprised me as well, especially the stuff about Mourinho. So, yeah, hopefully we get some more this week.
Well, I'm sure we will, because we've got another very special guest, the Premier League legend again. During his career, he won Serie A, the UEFA Cup, 2 FA Cups, and was twice Chelsea's Player of the Year. It is, of course, the one and only Gianfranco Zola. Franco, thank you very much for joining us. And where are you joining us from?
I'm actually in Sardinia right now, in the sunny Sardinia.
How awful for you. Yeah. You have a home there, don't you? You have a home there.
I do have a home here. Also, my family, my mom especially is over here. So I prefer to stay close to her as she is on her own. So it's we're here.
Have you had the golf clubs out yet, Gianfranco? Someone told me the other day.
It's a fake information. I used to think I was a good golfer. Then I played against Gary, and I had to change my opinion about that. So, but they open the golf courses. They open, and they are okay. They're good.
Very nice.
Right, let's get cracking. You know what this is about. It's the top 10. When I say top 10, we're talking for best player you've played with, the best player you've played against, the best manager you've played under, the favourite goal that you scored, favourite game you played in, football hero when you were growing up, funniest moment, best game you've ever watched, craziest teammate you've ever had alongside you, and the favourite international moment. I think we'll start with the best player you've played with, and I think I might know the answer to this question. Fire away.
Well, Gary, it's very easy to answer that question. It's obviously it's Diego Maradona. I think half of the player that I am is down to him, because of this. When you are young and you are playing and training with a player like that, you've got so much insights, so many things that they can improve the game, and so it's been the case for me. A very big blessing for me.
How old were you when you started playing with Maradona at Napoli?
Well, I wasn't that young. I was 22 when I went to play for Napoli. So I wasn't 17 or 18, but I had a big appetite, Jermaine, big desire to learn. And I cannot tell you how many times in training we had to stop training and clapping, because some of the things that they used to come out from him were incredible. I think. One day, we were in training and we were playing, the game that you play middle week, 11 versus 11 on the pitch. And so, basically, the goalkeeper that the Maradona was with passed the ball to him, and he was halfway in the middle of the pitch. So he threw the ball to him, he controlled the ball with the chest, and with the one lob, he lobbed the marker, and then without letting the ball bounce, hit this volley, and he lobbed the keeper on the other side. We said, we couldn't believe, Gary, we couldn't believe the goal that he scored, because it was unbelievable. Honestly, it was incredible. And he's one of the many.
Gaz, did you play against him at club level, Gary?
I didn't play against him at club level, but obviously international when he played for Argentina about 3 times, including the World Cup. I also, because if that question's ever directed to me, the best player you ever played with, I will also probably say Diego Maradona. It's a bit of a cheat, because it was actually a game. It was the centenary of the English Football League. They had a game at Wembley, and it was a team picked from the English Football League against the rest of the world. And I played for the rest of the world because I was at Barcelona at that particular time. And Diego played half a game. And it reminds me, the thing you said about when he volleyed over the goalkeeper. Well, we did a warm-up on the pitch before the game. And I tell you, there was like Zico and Careca, and there were all sorts of Platini and also. But everyone even people like Platini were in awe of Diego, and he had this incredible aura around him.
Unbelievable.
And he came out on the pitch, and he came out juggling a football. Now we've seen him do that. Have you ever seen the when he does the dancing to the music and the shoulder? It's amazing. But he came out on the pitch this day, and he was juggled the ball, and he got to the centre circle, and then he did this thing. It may not sound amazing, but truly it was. He hit it, and he hit it as high as he could in the sky. And it came right down again, and then he volleyed it right up in the air again, about 50 feet, whatever it was. And he did it for about 12 goes, and he never had to do anything but walk to the next one. Now, any footballer will know that. It's impossible. It's impossible. The difficulty. But he did it. And then all of us were just stood there with our tongues hanging out going, oh my God. And then in training everywhere, I think the next day, everyone was trying it in training and stuff. But I think the best anyone did at Barcelona, where I was at the time, was about 4. And then each one of those, you're running for the 3rd and 4th one. I mean, it was the control of the football that he had. What about the other side of Diego Maradona's life? You know, obviously he's had drug problems. We've seen the movie. It was very sad the way it ended at Napoli, wasn't it? It really was.
No, absolutely, Gary, because again, as I said, I'm one of the ones that I met him on the pitch and off the pitch, and I can tell you he was a very, very wonderful guy. In Naples, it was impossible for him to go out, so the only way he could go out, it was the night, when everybody was in.
It's a good excuse.
Yeah, it's a good excuse. I'm trying to... No, having said that, yes, I know that Diego had some of his, behavior sometimes they've been very damaging, but they've always been damaging for himself, mainly. Yeah. I can only think what he could have done if he was a little bit more regular in his life. But it's very difficult to say. But again, Gary, I want to stress it out. It's very important. This is not going to take anything away from the person, because everybody loved him. Not just because
that's very true.
Not because he was able to win games for us, but because he was genuinely a very humble person, a very generous person.
Let's move on to the best player you've played against. I don't know if you ever played against Diego, but you can't have him again, so you've got to have someone else.
But it's, I think in the end, the choice goes to, although I played him only once, and he was in a friendly, but the impression he gave me from watching him in that game was unbelievable. It was Ronaldo, the Brazilian. I think I can say he was the player that got close what Diego used to do. The difference that there was between Diego and the others was similar to the difference I noticed from Ronaldo to the others.
If he hadn't have had the injuries that he had in his career, I mean, how many goals would he have scored? His numbers would probably have been up there, don't you think, with what Messi and Ronaldo are now doing?
It's difficult to compare to nowadays, Gary, because you remember in those years it was much harder to score goals. First of all, because the defenders were I wouldn't say now that they're not proper defenders, but they were only focused on defending, so it was more difficult for us to find.
And they could kick people back then.
Oh, for sure. I can tell
difference seriously though.
I think it's a fair statement. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, no.
It makes a difference now. You commit a foul, you get a yellow card, and then they're treading on thin ice.
Yeah, no, I think
it's different. It's a great rule change.
No, absolutely. Nowadays, I mean, they're good, very good defenders. No doubt about that. But they're more midfielders than defenders. All the teams, they want to play from the back, and so they want people at the back that they have a good technical ability, vision. They want players that they can play. Those years, it was there were 4 proper defenders and sometimes 3 of the 4 midfielders. They were also midfielders, defending midfielders. So it was tough to find spaces and to score goals.
Let's move on now to you. We've got it down as the favourite goal that you scored, which doesn't necessarily mean it was the best goal you scored, but perhaps you could give us both, your favourite and your best goal. Or maybe they're the same thing. You scored a few free kicks that I've admired over the years, that's for sure.
Thank you very much. I used to practice a lot with that. No, I think one of the I give you two, right? If I can. The first goal in Serie A, very, very important. It gave me such a confidence, such a boost. Also with the supporters, they started to believe.
Was that a home game?
It was a home game against Atalanta. I can't remember it was the 1-0 or the 2-1 for us, but very, very important. The other one, I would say, without doubt, the score against Stuttgart in Copenhagen, when we won the Winners' Cup with Chelsea. Another very important goal for two reasons. First, because I wasn't supposed to play that game because I pulled my groin very badly.
Yeah.
Normally it takes more than a month to recover. I managed to recover, and then I scored a goal. It was very important.
My favourite goal, I think I see you score, was Peter Schmeichel was in goal, and I think you were playing for Chelsea, and you was going along the byline, and you looked like you were going to cut it back to the penalty spot, and as you did that, obviously Schmeichel comes flying out, but you knew that he was going to do this, and you put it in at the near post. And I'm guessing you two are like me. I really enjoy seeing keepers getting embarrassed by making the wrong decision.
Absolutely, especially great keepers. Especially great keepers.
Exactly.
Jermaine, Peter embarrassed me so many other times.
Of course. He's a great player. It's a good moment. It's a nice moment.
Absolutely.
You're too modest.
No, it's true. I think that was my first game against United. It was at the bridge. And I think I received the ball from Dan Petrescu down the right, and I pretended to cross the ball. I can't remember who was I think it was Irwin. That he was, he thought I was going to cross the ball because on the second post there was Mark Hughes, I think. So instead of doing that, I cut inside and I went through Pallister as well. Then, obviously, in front of the goalkeeper, I didn't think very much. I closed my eyes, I smashed the ball.
I'm sure you didn't close your eyes.
I've never seen you do that ever.
No, I didn't.
I've heard of the reverse pass, but not the close your eyes pass or shoot. Yeah, that's quite a different thing altogether. Right, Franco.
Brilliant.
The favourite game that you've ever played in?
The game against Liverpool in the FA Cup, I think it was the third round. I tell you why, because I didn't know how important it was the FA Cup in Italy. So when we played this game against Liverpool, in those years it was very strong, and we were just getting better as a team. So we played there. After 45 minutes, we are 2-0 up. 2-0 down. Forgive me, 2-0 down. But then we came down in the second half, and the atmosphere was unbelievable. I remember that Mark Hughes came on. And as soon as he came on, after a few minutes, we scored the 2-1. I don't know, it's very difficult to say exactly what it was, but you could feel on the pitch that it was a special game. Yeah. And in the end, we came down for 2-0 to beat Liverpool 4-2, and it was, for me, an unbelievable game. I was very, very pleased to be involved.
Right, Franco, what was your favourite international moment? You scored the only goal against England, I remember, on one occasion.
Yeah, very proud of that.
I'm surprised we let you in the country.
Well, for me, Gary, I don't know for you, but for you too. But playing for your own country, I've always thought it was the best thing that could happen to you. So I always took a big pride of being part of the Italian squad. So that day, obviously, it was in England against England, and so I wanted to do well, and scoring the winner was such a big satisfaction for me, especially when the day after, when I went to the training ground and I saw the Dennis Rice face.
I wish I could have returned the favour myself playing against. It's funny because I played all the international teams I played with. Of all the big countries that I played against, Italy was the only country that I didn't score against of all the big ones. Yeah. So Brazil, Argentina, France, Spain. You know, they're so good defensively, though. I'll give them that.
And who was that? I mean, during that period, Gary, you must remember kind of the back fours you came up against with Italy. Like, who was the nemesis for you? I know Baresi was in there, but was it the collective or the individual?
There, but the one that was hard to play against, who was brutal, and he'd kick you. And the problem with him, he was also really quick. You remember? I think it was Pietro Vierkovod. Oh my!
Gary,
yes.
Let me say this. I think it was 3 or 4 months ago. We played the repetition of the World Cup final in America, 1994, in Fortaleza, Brazil. Right? And because we were short on numbers, we took some of the players, like Schillaci, that they didn't play the World Cup, but they were part of the qualification for the World Cup. And one of them was Pietro Vierkovud. So he came on in the second half, and I think there was Romario. I think he really kicked him so much.
He was brutal. You talk about you can keep your Tony Adams, you can keep your Keown. I'm telling you, Vierkovud was on a different scale. Yeah, that actually, speaking of 94, Franco, that must have been hard for you, 94. You got that red card, didn't you? And then...
Yeah, well, that was very, very hard, very, very harsh also myself, because I didn't do anything, Gary. It was my first game, actually, in the World Cup. You know, I prepared a lot for it, but anyway, it's something that happened. But I promise you, even knowing that he was going to go the same way, I wouldn't have... I would have paid a lot of money to be part of that experience, because play the World Cup in such a edition in America was unbelievable.
Right, let's move it on. Next one, this will be interesting. Your football hero when you were growing up, not Pietro Vierkovod, I hope.
Well, the first one when I first started, when I was very young and I was in my own town, very, very young. I think it was everyone's dream as a footballer. It was Gigi Riva. Then, obviously, when later on, Maradona was the one that I was using as a player to look up to.
These heroes of yours, obviously Diego, fully understand. But did you try to emulate these players in your game? I understand again, like Diego is very difficult to emulate, but were they players that you looked at and thought, I can do similar things that they can do, and I want to play like them?
Well, Jimmy, I used to watch every single movement. So from when the training started, I used to watch everything Diego used to do in training. Even I like to watch him, when he's doing his own laces. But that's when you are young and you are willing to learn. You look everything, you try to notice everything. Like every single gesture is important to make yourself as good as him.
And how is your lace tying these days?
I have no laces anymore at the moment.
Yeah, no, can't bend down far enough now to tie them. I can't. I have to get slip-ons. Great stuff. Right, next bit. This is, I'm sure you've had lots of funny moments. The funniest moment, which could be a teammate or a moment, a story.
Well, I think it's the first day out with the boys in England. I arrived in November November 96, and I didn't know there was this tradition that for the Christmas lunch the whole team goes out. Not Christmas dinner, no lunch.
Here we go.
Everybody goes out. I was totally unused to it. Didn't know what was expecting me. They told me a few stories, but so I went there. We went to this disco, and the first thing I stepped into the disco, I was a little bit late, like normal, and as I stepped in, I see Frodo Crodas on top of a table, half undressed, completely drunk, obviously, and singing, you know, a Norwegian song on a table. That was, I think, it was so hilarious to see him in that condition. But it was so funny. It was great. I think you know, that was one of the reasons we were successful, because we had a very good atmosphere between each other.
Right, Franco, what's the best game you've ever watched?
Yes, Brazil-Italy in 1982, the 3-2.
Oh, what a game. Yes, unbelievable game. The best team never to win the World Cup.
I agree with you. For me, that Brazil team, I still reckon is one of the best teams I've seen play. They used to play football. They used to play football in a way that nobody could. It was unbelievable.
If they'd have had someone like Careca up front.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, because obviously the big, it's Serginho, wasn't it, that struggled a little bit.
They
but
used
what
to
a
say
team.
all the time about the striker and the goalkeeper. They said that they were not. They say Barriers were. The midfield was a dream.
Oh, unbelievable.
So, Gary, what was it? Did they get kicked to pieces, or...?
No, it was just an unbelievable game, and Paolo Rossi came from nowhere. He'd been struggling.
Stole it.
There was a big scandal, wasn't there, with Rossi prior to it, and he hadn't played for a long time. A long ban, was it match fixing?
Yeah,
or something?
Max.
But it's Italy. That just happens in Italy, doesn't it?
When you start on this. Yeah, actually, I think he didn't play for a month and a half, 2 months. He just came back, and that game was a different.
It was just end to end, and Brazil played some beautiful football, but every time they kind of got into the game and they scored some great goals, Paolo Rossi knocked one in at the other end and it finished 3-2. And of course, Italy went all the way, of course, in that World Cup. And also the final, the best celebration ever for a goal.
Unbelievable. I think if you remember, Gary, we played all the qualifications game, all the games until that stage where we went through, I think, on goal difference, and we were not playing good at all. There were a lot of critics over here, and then we end up in this group, which is Brazil, Argentina, and Italy. Which everybody said there is no chance. There is no chance that we can go through. Actually, we beat Brazil, we beat Argentina, and then from that moment we became stronger. But that game in particular was so emotional.
Incredible. Yeah, I think the game between Brazil and Italy, I think that was played at the Espanyol Stadium. I think. I'm sure it was played in Barcelona, that game. I might be wrong, but somebody will be quick to tell me if I am. That's for sure. Let's move on. Just a couple left now, and this could be interesting. If it's not Diego Maradona, then I don't know who it'll be. Your craziest teammate.
Without doubt.
You've had a few crazy ones that I can think of, to be honest.
Dennis is a long guy for sure, but the one I think probably one of the craziest but also funniest at the same time was Faustino Aspiglia in Parma.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I've heard a few stories from Alan Shearer about. I forgot you played with him at Parma.
Yeah.
What was he, just crazy, a party animal? What was it?
Oh, it was definitely one day. I think we are all in training. And we started training in the morning, and so we go on the pitch, and we look at each other and said, "Where is Aspiglia? Where's Tino?" Tino wasn't there. So basically, this guy went to have a party the night, and on the way back, he just dropped on the side of the road somewhere, and he fell asleep. So they found him still asleep on the road.
Oh, Christ. It's unbelievable.
There was Tino actually. It's fantastic teammate. Very, very good. Always creating good atmosphere. And in my opinion, unbelievable potentials.
And what about Dennis Wise then, Gianfranco? Because he was obviously another one. He must have been there.
He's on a different league.
I can imagine.
Strong personality, very important for us, Chelsea at the moment in that year, because he was the guy, the catalyst of everything. He used to keep everyone used to respect him, not only the English but also the foreign players. That's the reason why despite all the nationalities within the team, we kept all the time together.
You've played with some great coaches, some great managers, top people. Best manager?
Well, Arrigo Sacchi. Also, Nevio Scala with Parma, very good coaches. I was fortunate in that sense, but I think Sacchi was in those years was a step ahead of everyone. It was, we used to train in a certain way, but then when we went to him, we started, this different approach, looking after every single detail on the pitch, and a lot of specific training for the defense, for the midfield, for the strikers, and I thought it was on a different level.
Obviously you were part of Sarri's team at Chelsea. Any plans? What are you going to do around the game? Looking to get back into it?
Yeah, well, yes. Why not? If a good opportunity comes, I'll be happy to take. But at the moment, I decided after last year, Gary, the way he finished more than anything, to take a little bit of distance, to look after other things. I'm very happy with that. Honestly, I'm very happy. But if an opportunity, a good one, come, I'll be ready, because last year's experience has been great for my coaching. Really, a lot of things to learn from.
Yeah. What's more enjoyable, playing or coaching?
Well, I'll tell you something. There are moments in the coaching, on the coaching side, that they can be very, very exciting. Like the game I played against, with Leicester, with Watford Leicester, when we beat them.
Oh yeah.
The incredible match. That moment I really felt like I was playing a game. But in general, it's much more stressful. Playing is a different story.
You could have mentioned any other game than that. Thank you very much. Those
made my day. Absolutely made my day, Gianfranco. Thank you very much.
Franco, it's been wonderful to talk to you, and I'm sure I don't have to say enjoy life in Sardinia. I mean, what's not to enjoy there? What a beautiful place to live.
I'll get your number, so I'll make sure that I can send you a picture of me, just to make you part of it, and not don't take it in the wrong way.
Do that. Thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure. I really enjoyed, guys.
And Jermaine, thank you too. As always.
You too, pal.
Bye.
That was great, as always, wasn't it? Good evening, it's 5 Live. You doing all right tonight? I hope so. On this Wednesday evening, it's Chris Warburton with you till 1 o'clock for the final time this week. It's been great being with you. Stay with me if you can. I'll let you know exactly what we're doing.